question is, what mind work does this part of the text want me to do? So I want you guys to be thinking of that while I'm reading this lesson, okay? Because this kind of relates to a lesson we did before, okay? So look at that question, think of it while I'm talking, okay? So have you guys, and I think I know the answer to this, how many of you guys have played a video game or play a video game at home, on the computer, on your DS? I don't know what systems you guys have lately. Awesome. So think about a time maybe where you mastered a level. Then for your reward, you get to move on to an even harder level. That's usually how video games work, right? And all of a sudden, you're not a master anymore. This level is really hard and you can't do it. So this happens not only when you're working at becoming better at video games, but it also happens when you're working at becoming better at anything. So I remember, I think I've told you guys before that I played tennis. I played tennis in high school and middle school. So when I was little, probably about your age, is when I started to play tennis. So my parents would help me play. They would hit the ball gently over the net, and I would aim for it, let it bounce just a little bit in front of me, and then I would hit it, and it would be perfect. After lots of practice, I felt like a pro tennis player. But then something happened. My parents started to hit them harder and harder and hitting them, so I had to run after the ball. They didn't just hit it to me. And all of a sudden, I was like, oh my gosh, I felt like I was a beginner again. So I'm telling you this because this happens with us as readers. So we get stronger as a reader. We've been reading nonfiction texts, remember? So it's not different from me getting really good at tennis and then it getting harder. So you guys have learned a lot about reading nonfiction texts, okay? Some of them are structured as expository texts, meaning that, let me stop my share real quick, meaning that it has a table of contents. There is a section about what frogs do, what frogs eat. It has pictures like all of this. It's kind of broken up by topic of the frogs, right? Broken up by topic of the frogs. We learned about topics of gorillas, toads. So it's structured with subheadings. But also, you guys, we've been reading in the last few days books called narrative nonfiction. And those have been structured like stories, right? Biographies, they're structured like a story. They have a beginning, a middle, and an end. But here's the thing. In real life, just like how the tennis balls wouldn't land exactly in front of me, easily to hit them back, I had to run across the court to get them. And in real life, many nonfiction books won't fit into the two kinds of categories, the two kinds of nonfiction books that you guys have learned how to handle. So with that, I'm meaning the expository and the narrative. Sometimes it's a mixture of both, all right? It's a hodgepodge. So they contain a little bit of the expository part, a little bit of the story part, and then they're put together to make one book, and we're going to call those hybrids. I want all you guys to say the word hybrid. You don't have to unmute yourself. You can just say hybrid. So that's when we take two things and kind of put them together and make one. So I want to teach you guys today, when reading a hybrid text, a nonfiction text that has a story but also is having information like a box and bullet, that the parts that a narrative signals for readers to read them like story, and there's parts that have them read like an expository. Box and bullet, collecting the main idea and supporting details, okay? So we're going to do a little activity, okay? So you're going to find that these hybrid texts expect you to shift gears in the middle of your section. So you guys need to be alert. So it won't just say, this is going to read like a story. Or it's not going to tell you, this is going to read like an expository, a box and bullet. It's not going to tell you, is it? So, for example, if the text names a person and begins telling you what this person's doing, saying, thinking. That kind of reminds you of your story, right? You start to picture it in your head. And you're probably then reading a story. This might be a 1 paragraph long thing, or it could be a page long thing, or it could be a chapter book, a whole book. You know that you're kind of in story mode. You're thinking, okay, who's the main character? What is their problem? What is this person like? Are they nice, funny, strong, lazy, hardworking, silly, goofy, mean, angry? But you also will see sections of a text that like a report, right? A topic sentence. Frogs live all over the world except Antarctica. Okay, well, this is going to tell us where the frogs live then. And then you're going to have to start thinking of a box and bullet. Remember, the box is our main idea, and the bullets are those supporting details of that idea. So we're going to do a little activity together, okay? I'm going to read something out loud, and you guys are going to have to tell me when we switch to that story thinking and when we switch to the expository thinking, okay? So here's the 2 ways. Look at this one right here. Is it a narrative nonfiction, meaning should I read it as a story? Or is it expository? Should I collect main ideas and details? All right, so I'm going to read this section. You guys just have to listen, okay? You're just listening. All you're doing is listening. Okay, ready? Whew, let me get in my reading voice. George W. Allen was proud of 2 things, his name and his birthday. George was named for George Washington, and he had the same birthday, February 22nd. It made him feel almost related, he said. It made him want to know everything there was to know about George Washington. He knew quite a lot. He knew that Washington was a general and lived in Virginia and was 6 feet tall and married to Martha and was the first president of the United States. He knew Washington rode 2 horses in the war, Blueskin and Nelson, but Nelson was his favorite because he was so steady in gunfire. He also knew that George Washington once had 10 hunting dogs. Their names were Tipsy, Poppet, Harry, Maiden, Lady, Duchess, Drunkard, True Love, Mopsy, and Pilot. Then, one morning at breakfast, George Allen thought of something he didn't know. George's mother and father had gone to work, and his grandmother was frying eggs at the kitchen stove. "Grandma," George said, "what did George Washington eat for breakfast?" "Search me," his grandmother said. "That was before my time." She put a plate of fried eggs in front of George. "And don't expect me to help you find out either." Okay, think. So we shifted from one text, an expository, to a story, a narrative nonfiction. So let's look back at this text, okay? I can't really highlight it. Let's see if I can mark it up. Okay, so let me read it again. George Allen was proud of 2 things, his name and his birthday. George was named for George Washington, and he had the same birthday, February 22nd. It made him feel almost related, he said. So George is talking. So that makes us think that this part is a narrative, a story. This first part here is a narrative, a story, okay? Because it said he said. He already knew quite a lot. He knew that Washington was a general and lived in Virginia. He was 6 feet tall, married to Martha, first president of the United States. That part's not really a story. It seems to be that now we're just listing things that we can make a box and bullet. Same with this section too. He knew that Washington rode 2 horses in the war, Blueskin and Nelson, but Nelson was his favorite. He also knew he had 10 hunting dogs. That's just telling us we should be making a list almost. We could say box and bullet, box, George Washington's horses, bullet, Blueskin, bullet, Nelson, bullet. Nelson was his favorite, okay? Another box and bullet we could do. hunting dogs, 10 hunting dogs. And then the bullet points could be all his hunting dogs' name. But then after that, George Allen starts thinking about how he didn't know what George Washington ate for dinner. And then he starts talking to his grandma. So we know we're back in story mode down here. So we switched from expository, learning about George Washington, his horses, his wife names, his hunting dogs. We switched then to story mode to talk about George, little George, is thinking, what is he eating for breakfast? He's talking to his grandma, so that's a story, right? So let's look at this, and I put the same picture on your writing page for Canvas today. When reading, I know it's kind of hard to see, so let's read here. When reading a narrative nonfiction, read it like a story. What are the subject or the main character's traits, motivations, need? What struggles are they facing? Read it as information. What topics can we learn? The main idea, supportive. Identify the text as a narrative nonfiction when it follows a story, okay? But also we got expository. So our gorilla book, our frog book. Pause and chunk. Look at, here's our little hand down here. I know it's hard to see. Our hand and fingers. Remember when we did that? Who remembers when we did the hand and finger thing? Raise your hand. Who remembers when we did the box and bullet? Oh, you guys should know. You guys should know box and bullet. You should be dreaming about boxes and bullets in your sleep right now, guys. Chunk into subheadings. Remember we did this with the octopus thing. Teach others what you guys learned to read. So I'm hoping, I know that we're not in school right now and you guys might not be able to talk with your friends as much, but I'm hoping some of you have siblings at home, parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, friends at home. I hope what you read in reading, you go and tell them about. It's awesome to tell them about. I actually want you guys to try that today. Whatever book you read today, I want you to go after class today, after we're done, and tell someone about your book that you read today, okay? Revise your idea of the main idea as you read on, okay? So sometimes our main idea might change. And let the text spark conversation. Remember when we practice going around the room and having really good conversation with each other and how you guys kind of went back and forth, back and forth? I want you to do that today, later. When school's over with, when your parents are home, grandparents, aunts, uncles, whoever the adult is at your house, talk to them about the book you read today. Okay, so what we're going